If you're looking for all the answers, I still don't have them. But what I do have is a particular set of skills. Skills I've acquired over a very long career. Skills that make me a nightmare for people who mislead, misinform, or misrepresent the sports card industry. So if you don't do that, I'll let it go. If you do, we'll talk about you. Hey guys, welcome to a bonus episode of the Sports Card, a very special bonus episode of the Sports Card Investigator. My name is Andy. I am the aforementioned Sports Card Investigator, and today I am very happy to bring to you my first live on-tape interview with a very, very special individual, one of the brightest basketball minds that I know and count on for information. So, I hope you enjoy it. We're going to talk about cards. We're going to talk about players. We're going to talk about insight. We're going to talk about process. So I hope you guys enjoy it. I hope you guys enjoy it as much as I had fun doing it. So with that, let's get going. Welcome everyone, and welcome to a very special edition of the Sports Card Investigator. As we continue our journey through the sports card industry, I think it's important every once in a while that I bring on some guys with a different perspective in the hobby. You know, it's funny, a couple videos ago, I got a comment that said, you need a younger person's perspective on the hobby. You must be from the 19th century. Well, you guys know I'm old, but I'm not that old. But I thought to myself, who better to bring on and have a discussion about the state of the hobby and other things from a younger person that I know personally. A great perspective. My producer, my director, my editor, basically the glue that holds the Sports Card Investigator show together, my son, Tyler. So without further ado, let's bring on Tyler. Tyler, welcome from sunny California, a million miles away. How's everything going?
It is going wonderful. It is indeed very sunny, 70.
Yeah, it's a dreary, dreary day, and it's not always sunny in Philadelphia because today it is dreary and wet and ugly. But I am very happy. I am excited to have you on the show. Before we get started, that is quite the background you have behind you. Can you tell some of the people what is exactly behind you?
Yeah, I'm glad you noticed here. So there's actually a few back here that are my favorites. One specifically, not one of my favorite player of all time, right here, Richard Hamilton autograph with the great Kobe Bryant guardian, which leads me to this limited edition Kobe Bryant ball behind me too that I cherish very much. But personally, one of my favorites right here is my Temple University lineup where we have Pepe Sanchez, Mark Macon, Deontay Christmas, Lavoy Allen, and a Quentin Rose card behind me. We are just missing a Khalif Wyatt to add to the greats.
Wow, those were the days when we were actually good.
That's for sure.
I long for those days. So before we get down to business, because I know you have a lot of information and knowledge that I know that I am anxious for you to share with the audience, because we're going to talk about players and especially the rookies. Give the guys a little background on yourself, especially how it pertains to basketball, so we can see a little bit where your expertise comes from.
Yeah, absolutely. So growing up, I of course played basketball through high school at a competitive level, through high school playing in big circuits where we played against players who are now in the NBA. Yeah, from there, I wanted to keep in the basketball industry. So instead of playing in college, since my playing ability and my athletic build did not take me to college, I wanted to still continue with basketball. So I worked for 4 years with Temple University men's basketball as a team manager. Awesome opportunity. Great players are there, some great coaches. And then from there, I moved to California to coach youth basketball, different skill levels, AAU, camps, all that. And that's where I am now, but still love basketball, student of the game.
That is awesome. That is awesome. So since we're talking about cards, and that's why we're here, what first attracted you to card collecting?
So I guess my first recollection of cards are a couple things. One, I wanted to get into cards because I remember two of my friends, or a few of my friends in high school, they would go to the games early. I know you've talked about it before, and get autographs. And the best thing to get autographed were trading cards. So I would want to go and buy cards. Back then it was easy. We could go to Target and buy as many cards as we wanted of NBA hoops, even boxes. Like, it was just always on the shelf. And then, which brings me to two of my earliest memories, which was one of the very first boxes we got was Donruss. And it said that you were guaranteed one hit. And we got to the end of the box and there was no hits at all. And we were really confused. And then we were like, well, what is this? And it was a redemption for a Kobe Bryant autograph, numbered to 49 on card autograph, which when we got it, I still didn't even know what a redemption was. So once it came, that was wild. And then I also remember during Linsanity getting an NBA hoops box and pulling a Jeremy Lin autograph as well. Those are two of my earlier memories.
Yep. And that was a while ago. You're probably what?
Probably freshman in high school.
Yeah.
How old am I then? 14, 15? I don't know.
So people who watch this show, we're going to dive right into it because that's how people want. They want to know about cards and collecting and some of the process. So people know from me, I buy raw cards, I grade them, and I sell them. And sometimes I talk about you that your process is completely different. You're more of a raw card, speculative, and you buy it just at the times where you think is going to be most beneficial, and then you either hold them for a bit or you flip them. So can you explain basically what your process is with the raw cards, or what you do?
Yeah, it's a lot more tedious than the grading route. It's a lot of just organizing them into huge lots. Like the cabinets behind me, some of them are literally just full with cards. And just like one weekend, I call it like a power hour. I'll just sit there and have them all into huge piles. And then I'll sit there and I'll list 30 huge lots of whichever players I think are playing at a high level or could have a big game in the next either 24 to 72 hours and just make money off them. Because I think a big thing with raw cards too is it's very hard to where you're going to see like huge return on investment. Like, you're not going to go from necessarily buying a $1 card and it going to a $300 card. If you want to do that, grading's the way to go. But if you buy them at the right time and not be scared to maybe lose on some, overall, I think it's a good way to kind of consistently get money back and be able to put it into other lots of players that you think are going to be good.
Now, that reminds me, you don't limit yourself to any specific series of cards like Optic or Prism or, Donruss or NBA Hoops or Chronicles or Revolution. Oh, can you explain a little bit about that? Like, if you see a player that you think is going to be hot, like, is there a certain series you go after, or it's just whatever makes the most financial sense?
Honestly, I kind of go through a tiered system. My first thought is Prism, because that's like I feel like the standard. And like, when you're like, okay, if I want the best card of someone of, I guess, the more like within the last 5 or so years is, I want to go get the Prism rookie. But at the same time, if it's like someone like who's an unobtainable Prism rookie like Zion, like, then I'm more than happy to go to Chronicles or Certified or Optic. I definitely like some more than others, but if the value's there, if people buy the cards, then that's all I care about. And even in some sense, when people don't buy the cards, because at first people may say, I don't want to go buy Chronicles. Like, look, they're selling for $1. That's nothing. But a lot of times if you're like, hey, if everyone's buying everything else that's Zion or Ja Morant or whoever, why would I not buy that? Because I guarantee at some point people are gonna be like, oh, maybe I should go buy those up too.
That's a real good point, because I talk about this in one of the episodes. Is we knew, or anyone who knew basketball knew that Ja Morant was going to win Rookie of the Year, even when Zion was coming back, when he lost his 20 pounds, and it was like, oh, if he comes back and they make the playoffs, and if we knew that wasn't going to happen. But at that point, Ja Morant, even his Prism cards were kind of pricey, even for his raw cards and even his Optic. So I know we had a discussion, and you basically said way before that, just start. I'm just buying all the Chronicles I can. And you actually lucked in, or not lucked into. It's like, I always say that luck is a residue of hard work, right? So you actually were buying the luminance of Ja Morant. That was a very good investment, and you did pretty well on that, let's say.
Yeah, definitely. Just being able to Uh, I remember that was right around the time when Bull had his like big game, and people were making crazy money off him having a big game in a practice game in the bubble, basically. And I was saying, like, if people are buying cheap lots of him and then just flipping them a little bit later, then who's a good player to do that? And then when, as you were saying, we knew Ja Morant was going to win Rookie of the Year, regardless of what happened at any point in the bubble. Even if the Pelicans made the playoffs, once it was, I'm pretty sure the MVP voting is up until the playoffs. It might have even been before the bubble. So regardless of what happened at that point, it shouldn't go into who won Rookie of the Year. So it was going to be Ja Morant. Zion couldn't miss that many games. And his prices were down. So you figure as a reactionary market, once they announced that he won Rookie of the Year, a lot of people are probably going to be surprised who shouldn't have been surprised and want to hop in on being an investor in him. So I figured that'd be a good time to just buy and flip. And then when people forget about him, I could go buy more.
That's what we talk about, right? It's reactionary market. You take advantage of people's reactions, and it's something that fortunately or unfortunately for us, it works in our, it definitely works on our behalf, because we usually do well on reactions, because usually we have those cards that people are going to go after. And I think that's an important thing that I try to tell the guys is, just try to stay one step ahead of the crowd, for lack of a better word. And one of the things that I'll bring up that kind of reminds me of during the year, like, obviously what I do is with the rookies, but during the year, you'll contact me and say, hey, not for nothing, but look at certain guys like CJ McCollum or Jeremy Grant or Julius Randle, Zach LaVine, or whoever it may be. And then I'll look at them, and, you usually catch them before or while they're starting to rise. Like, is there any process, or is there anything other than just really studying and seeing what's going on with the teams?
A lot of time it stems from different things. Sometimes it'll be a player I have on my fantasy basketball team who I'm just seeing their stats day after day after day, so I can pick up on consistencies on certain players. Sometimes I'll see someone tweet about that player who I trust. As you mentioned, Rashad Phillips tweets about players all the time, and usually after he does, I go look more into that person. And then sometimes it's just other things, like I'll be on YouTube and it'll be like the most underrated player, and I usually give it a watch. And sometimes it's things that I watch, I'll be like, well, I don't know how you're calling that player underrated. But sometimes it's someone I'm like, that is interesting. He looks really good. And then I look into it a little more myself. So it's a lot of times players like that, or it's players who I saw in college who they're like mid-major and just they played against Temple, and I recognize them from there and think that they have a good chance to kind of blow up.
So basically, it's everything's right in front of you, and I'll be the first one to admit I watch all the games, but I'm usually concentrating on the rookies, because a lot of times, for graded cards like CJ McCollum or Julius Randle, even then when they start going, you're not. For me, it's already the ship has sailed, because if I'm going to go look for their if I buy 5 or 6 cards, maybe one might be gradable because they're a little bit older. They've already been cherry picked. But for you, it's a whole different situation, because you'll go out there and buy them raw, and then just wait for a price enhancer if they're doing well with the team or the All-Star game or whatever they're in the running for, and then you'll just flip them and then just use that as an incentive or a price enhancer.
Well, it's kind of the opposite. I look for the price dehancer a lot of the time, like the injury. Like, for example, that Steph Curry that's sitting behind you over there, when he broke his wrist and the Warriors were atrocious and people were talking about how he only has his rings because of KD and the superstar powers that he had, and that he didn't have competition, how he chokes, and people are acting like he's not one of the best players of all time and the greatest shooter of all time. And eventually people are going to remember that, whether it's at the end of his career or the next season. So when you can buy his rookie card for $25, why would you not go buy that? Or like, I know we're going to talk at some point about players I'm looking at now, but there's players like one that I don't mention, like Klay Thompson. Like, he's been out 3 years. Could he come back and be bad? I don't know, but he's arguably a top 3 shooter of all time. Like, you got to start to see things like that. CJ McCollum was playing some of the best basketball of anyone this year before he got hurt, and he sits out, and people just sit there and don't realize when these players get hurt, they just drops. As you saw with LaMelo, his prices went down crazy when he could be back in 4 weeks or next season or whatever. But no need to react like crazy over a small injury like that.
You know what? It's funny. It's kind of changed the subject a little bit, but I promise we'll go right back on it. It drives me crazy with the whole MVP race now. It's like Joel Embiid gets hurt, so now oh, now it's LeBron, and then LeBron gets hurt, and now it's James Harden or who. I don't understand. So if Joel Embiid comes back and they go on a run, I mean they're holding above water, but then you look at a guy like LeBron. I was joking around. I think I sent it to you and I sent it to the other guy. The hot take: if LeBron doesn't come back for 4 weeks, the Lakers will not make the playoffs. That shows you how important a guy like that is to a team, where he was literally keeping them afloat while Anthony Davis was gone. But it's just funny how reactionary, even not just the card market, but how people are when someone gets hurt, they're completely off the radar. It just one of those things where I think it's an interesting dynamic.
The fact that, like, when a player gets hurt, it's like, oh, well, they're done forever. Like, they're never going to be a good player again. We need to sell him. That's a horrible investment. He's definitely going to drop. I need to get rid of him now. As opposed to just being like, oh, maybe like I sell off like one of the ones I have now just to get rid of it. And it's like, oh, I need to buy right now because this player just hit a half court shot to win the game. It's never just, I want to start watching him over the next couple games. It's always, oh, I either need to buy $500 worth or I need to sell everything I own. And that's why you see these big spikes and dips.
Yep. Oh, it's crazy. I was looking at LaMelo before we started the recording, and now that there's a little bit of talk, well, maybe he'll be back in 4 weeks. I don't know. But his card is dropped to the NBA Hoops card is dropped to 23. And then we actually saw the boxes first off the line from Panini, where maybe they just outpriced themselves because it started at 4,500 on a Dutch auction and it bottomed out at like 2,000 or 2,100. So I don't know what that means, but going forward, it'll be interesting to see, with the box prices, because I always use that as a gauge for the players. But
yeah, Dutch auctions, and that's a whole other subject, but that's like the most absurd way of pricing anything I've ever seen.
Yeah, it's like, well, who's going to what guys are going to jump in first, and it's, yeah, you're right. We could talk about that. But so before we dive into the good stuff, because I do want to get your take on some guys that you think are maybe underrated, under the radar, undervalued. You and I brag about this is last year towards the end of the year, well, we talk all the time, obviously, but you said, hey, look at Christian Wood, because this guy, he's going to do really well on his next contract, especially if he doesn't stay with the Pistons. But in his last 10 games, he has just been killing it. So to me, you're the one who told me about it, but what triggered you to say this guy could obviously be someone to look at?
Well, a lot of my friends are from Michigan, so they're Pistons fans. So I've heard them talk about Christian Wood quite a bit, but obviously no one really watches the Pistons right now. So you really don't see what's happening over there. And then I was on YouTube and I found a video of someone talking about Christian Wood and how his last 3 weeks have been one of the craziest stretches that someone's seen this season. So I was watching, I'm like, wow, this is impressive. He looks like a superstar the way he's playing, but people don't ever. I really haven't even heard his name anywhere. So I was watching more videos, looking at highlights, looking why I haven't heard of him, or why he went undrafted, or why he's been in the league for however many years and just now is starting to get popular. And it started to kind of make sense. And it would say well, he hasn't really had that opportunity. Now he does, and he's playing well. So as you've talked about, a year where he was going to get a new a new contract, that's a big price enhancer. And just media, when someone gets $100 million contract, there's going to be a lot of media around that player. So whether he went to the Rockets like he did, went back to Detroit, Boston, wherever it was, there's going to have that media attention. So I thought it was a good bet.
He's an interesting guy, because when you told me that, I started looking at his cards, and he had no cards. He had, I think, the rated rookie and the rookies and that was it. And they're paper cards. And I was buying them at, I bought a bunch, and I think I found the best 15 or 16. I sent them in for grading, and now you can't touch them. Now I can't recommend them, obviously, because number one, I don't do that, and number two, you're going to pay $100 for a paper card. I don't know how much room he's got in that, but it's just crazy that a guy like that, literally undrafted free agent, and there's a couple guys out there now that you have to look for their cards because they don't exist. And if they do, they're very, very limited. So sometimes you get a guy like that it is what it is, and you just have to get the card that's available. I saw some of his PSA 9s going for several $100s, and I think getting a gem mint out of those paper cards is going to be tough, especially with their age. And I think 1 or 2 minted, and I think they're over $1,000. I mean, that's to me, that's just crazy.
Absolutely.
So on the last show, I talked about the odds, the odds of Rookie of the Year, and we talked about LaMelo and Anthony Edwards, and barring some crazy thing, I don't see how anyone is going to basically overtake either LaMelo, because a lot of people that I'm thinking thinks that he still should get Rookie of the Year because he played 40 games and he was basically playing better than everyone else. Although some people would disagree, because if you look at Anthony Edwards' stats, he wasn't that far behind, and he's really, really come on strong. And then you have those other guys that are kind of on the fringe. I talked a little bit about Emmanuel Quickly, who is one of the guys that I'm, again, not telling you to buy or not, but I'm one of the guys that I'm looking at. Halliburton, I talked about, some other guys. So I'm going to bend my rule a little bit, because I know you really, really love to study the rookies, and I get a lot of information from your research, and so I think I would call you one of my best informants because of the information that you give me. And again, we're not telling anyone to buy or sell, but is anyone in this year's class kind of hopping off the screen that maybe people are just not paying attention to?
Yeah. So of course you have the Anthony Edwards, Lonzo, or LaMelo, excuse me, not Lonzo, LaMelo, and Halliburton, and of course, like Wiseman, those players who everyone is talking about, who I think are all great players. One player who I really haven't heard too much about, who I think has potential to be a superstar, and is kind of getting just lost behind the LaMelo and Anthony Edwards hype.
Now, wait,
and
now hang on. Now, before you're about to say this, you better come with some good information and good, lack of a better word, my background, some evidence, because we're not just, this is our audience, right? We're going to make sure. So with that in mind, go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. I also forgot to mention Quickly, who I really like as well too. But of course, I always come with all the information. But the guy who I really like is Saddiq Bey, another Detroit guy. Love Saddiq. Went to Villanova. I actually also got to watch him at the Under Armour Association when I worked stats there. He was a player there, but it's kind of funny. His freshman year in high school, he was 5'10", 5'11". Now he's 6'8". So he's gotten pretty big and was a top 100 recruit by his senior year. And so he kind of grew to his size very quick. He's a 21-year-old. As I mentioned, played from Nova. So you got to like the Big Five basketball, even if it is Villanova. And we are Temple fans. But I think he's has potential to be a stud. He won the Julius Erving Award in college for being the best small forward in college basketball his sophomore year. He can handle, he can shoot the ball. He's actually, I think, a really good shooter. His form looks a little stiff, but at the same time, it goes in. So it's still a good shot. He can defend. He looks calm and collected, looks poised. A lot of times you'll see young players, or even not young players, they look just out of control and trying to go way faster than the game. But he looks like he's been in the league for a while, even though he's a rookie. And he's extremely strong around the rim. Some negatives, though, he is a little bit slow and doesn't really get fouled, which you would like to see more of since he does have his bigger body. But his stats are impressive, and you just don't hear too much about it. He's playing 24 minutes a game as a rookie, although it is for the Pistons. He has 10.5 points a game, 4 rebounds, shooting 40% from the field, 38% from three. He shot really well from three in college, too, and he's an 80% free throw shooter. So I always look for kind of those three things: field goal percentage, 3-point percentage, and free throw percentage, because those are a lot of times what people look at when they react to things, is how many points they scored in a game, triple doubles, things like that. And especially free throws. That's a great way for players to just get more points and really load up the stat sheet. But a couple games that stand out was the 12th against the Celtics. He had 30 points, 12 rebounds in 27 minutes, and was 7 for 7 from three, which is a Detroit rookie record. But what's even more interesting was what he said after the game, in that going 7 for 7 as a rookie and 30 points, 12 rebounds in 27 minutes, which is insane. He went on to say, "I'm more happy that we got the win. It's a blessing to be able to play this game each and every day. For a living, I try to stay even keeled as much as possible, stay humbled, and know that I have to continue to build off it and help my team win," which is incredibly mature for a rookie to say, and just shows that he's in the right mindset. He just wants to play basketball. He could have said, "Oh, I'm the best rookie out here. People watch me," but he seems to have that right type of mindset, which will help him play for really good teams and get that spotlight even more. And then another kind of interesting little tidbit is that the Kings I think a couple days ago, offered one of your favorite players, Marvin Bagley, for Saddiq Bey straight up, and Detroit declined. So that shows how much it shows on just how I guess much they look at.
Who's kind of got a lot of insight over in Sacramento now, right?
Joe Dumars. Yeah.
Well, so he's probably got some good ties back to the Pistons. So what do you think, or can you is he falling into favor with? I mean, he's playing 24 minutes for a rookie. I mean, it's pretty good, even because you see how Detroit is horrible at managing their squad, and I guess with Blake going, that had to help him.
Well, that's the thing too. You think of Detroit as maybe not so good of a team since the early 2000s, but they actually have had some really good players come through the team. And I actually have a list of a bunch of players who within recent history have played for Detroit and have gone on from Detroit afterwards to be pretty good players, such as Chris Middleton, Andre Drummond, Spencer Dinwiddie, KCP, Christian Wood, Tobias Harris, Reggie Jackson, Markieff Morris, Avery Bradley, Glenn Robinson, Ish Smith, Boban. And I mean, some of these players better than others. And Jeremy Grant right now is playing at a really high level too. So it's not like they've never had good players, and that good players don't come out of there. So I don't know if in the next couple years or if in Detroit he's going to have that star power, but I think it's very possible that in the next 5 years, Saddiq Bey could be a lot more well-known name than he is now.
Well, that's some very, very good information. It's one of those guys that he is like really under the radar, because if you look at like the top rookies, he's really not mentioned, or not, even a guy like Emmanuel Quickley or Halliburton, or even like a guy on the Sixers like Tyrese Maxey, because he's playing for the Sixers. You get a little bit more publicity, I guess, for lack of better words. But because he's playing for the Pistons, he's under the radar. Maybe the Pistons are a breeding ground for good players after they leave the Pistons.
Yeah, and let me add one more thing, player comparison that I think is kind of interesting. Rashad specifically compared him to Antoine Walker and Shawn Marion. One player that I think he's kind of similar to is TJ Warren. But I think he has potential to be bubble TJ Warren, where he was unguardable and single-handedly beat the Sixers by himself. And to be honest, that's all you don't even need him to be a consistent player at that level. If you can have him be like that for a stretch of the season, you'll find those peaks where if you bought him today, let's say, or whenever you decided to buy Saddiq Bey, if you do, there's going to be a time that he could have a huge game where he goes off for 40 points. He has the arsenal to do that. And if he does, being able to make money off that is really all that you ask for when trying to make money off of cards.
Right. Now, I will, like, full transparency, I own 0 Saddiq Bey. I have not bought him. It's not cards that I am buying. I can't vouch for Ty. Maybe he did pick up some Saddiq Beys. I have no idea. But this is just information for you guys. That's all we try to do, right? I'm not going to look at a price chart and say, oh, this guy lost this, go buy him, go not buy. I'm never going to do that. You guys know that. It's just for us to give you information so you can make your own judgment. If you look at this and then you do your own research, your own homework, and say, hey, you know what, Saddiq, maybe he's worth a flyer, maybe I'll buy some cards, great. If not, terrific because everyone has their own process, their own strategies, and their own budgets. So that is what I would call a terrific breakdown. Now it's up for you guys to decide what you want to do next, right? So with that, I think we will put an end to the first ever live on tape guest appearance on the Sports Card Investigator. I would like to thank my special guest, my son, Ty Eisman. He, as I said before, I am just the talent. I just go and I say the things and we do stuff, but he puts everything together, and I really appreciate that. So with that, everyone, till next time, take care. Now.